Good morning or good afternoon to you all, and welcome to this session on moving towards smarter investments in data and statistics, presenting the Clearinghouse for Financing Development Data, which is co-organized by Paris 21 and Open Data Watch as part of this IATI virtual community exchange. My name is Jurei, and I'm the coordination lead for the Bern network on financing development data at Paris 21. And together with my colleague Jahanara Saeed, who's program manager at Open Data Watch, I will be facilitating this session. Now I see that there's still participants joining, so I will give them a few moments before we get started. But just to situate this event briefly to give you a bit of the context, this session today focuses on the critical role of development data to support effective as well as inclusive policymaking. And specifically, it highlights the importance of adequately resourcing data and statistics so they can fulfill their potential to help us all achieve sustainable development. And we saw in particular during the COVID-19 pandemic that decision makers everywhere really needed more timely and high quality data, both to respond to the pandemic and also now for the recovery process. But just as their demand for data grew, especially their demands on the national statistical offices, these NSOs saw their budgets reduced because of the pandemic. And in fact, last year, 63% of NSOs stated that they needed additional resources just to maintain their operations. So it's in this context that the Bern network has been working and considering how to achieve more and better financing for development data. And we are really proud to introduce and present to you today the Clearinghouse for Financing Development Data, which is an innovative platform which was developed by the network precisely to make financing for development data go farther. So we can achieve smarter financing for development data, both for domestic resources as well as for development aid. So on our agenda today, we have a set of introductory remarks, which will be followed by a few poll exercises and then a demonstration of the platform to give you a sense of what it's like and how it can work in practice. And then we will have a panel conversation with two eminent speakers from Malawi and from Switzerland before we open up to an interactive discussion with you all. And we do very much want to hear from you. So if you have any comments or questions during the session, please pop them in the chat and a member of the team will respond to you. And we will also bring your questions into the discussion. Just a few housekeeping notes. Please note that this session is being recorded. And there's also simultaneous interpretation available into French and into Spanish, so you can select your preferred language using the button at the bottom. So without further ado, let us get started. I am very pleased to welcome François Fonteneau, who is the Deputy Head of Paris 21, and will be setting the scene for us today and give us a bit of background on the Clearinghouse project. So François, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joy. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I think it's our pleasure for Paris 21 and ODW to be interacting with you today. I wanted to thank the IATI for having us and having us present this exciting new tool we have, the Clearinghouse, which is more than a tool, it's a platform and a community. So for us, it's very important to do it today. Just a week ago, we actually launched the prototype of the Clearinghouse in the United Nations World Data Forum in Bern, and this was a successful launch. We want to receive your feedback and your practical advice in terms of how we can improve this prototype and bring it to the next level. For us, it's really key that we receive the feedback of the IATI community. The platform was born in the Bern network, as Jurei mentioned. The core team behind the work was really the Paris 21 Secretariat, my team, and ODW team. We have Shaida Badiee here with us and a few more colleagues. Many different partners contributed to the Clearinghouse and helped really shape the design and make it a reality, including the government of Switzerland, Eurostat, IDRC Canada, the Statistics Division of the United Nations, the World Bank, the OECD, Data2X, and the whole broad Bern network community. So just a few words on this Bern network, which is an informal network of donors and other stakeholders who want to achieve smarter financing for data and statistics, including domestic resource mobilization, increasing aid, and increasing aid efficiency. Quite an agenda, you will tell me, indeed. We started with a simple assessment that more transparency on what is funded, where, and by whom, for what, would be actually a good starter. And I think this transparency, openness is a story which must resonate big time with the IIT community here. Underinvestment in data and statistics is quite an old story. We are quite good in measuring how much aid goes to data and statistics. That's actually something which we do in Paris 21, and that's actually a SDG indicator altogether. It's roughly 700 million a year of aid which goes to statistics, but we are much more insecure when it comes to actually measuring the needs, what is needed in terms of investment in data, both from aid, from domestic resources. And that's where the Clearinghouse really is the game changer, because we hope we can identify key projects, key funding gaps associated with different policy areas or SDG areas. So what you will find in the Clearinghouse, you will find an impressive list of past projects and past investments. We have a list of 36,000 such projects. So it's an amazing resource to really understand what is being financed or what has been financed, where, by whom. We have funding flows from and between different stakeholders. We have detailed profiles for 7 development providers and detailed profile for 23 IDA countries. So it's a wealth of new information, which is immensely useful for better financing and better targeting of investments. We have an exciting new gender channel. As you all know, gender is a top priority for Paris 21 and ODW, and we are particularly excited with having a special focus on gender data investment. All of this information comes from a multiple variety of data sources. We use extensively the OECD DAX CRS data, the IIT data, other data sources from the World Bank, UNSD, and the OECD and ODW. It's quite solid in terms of methodologies with a few innovations. I would like to mention in particular the nowcasting and forecasting of aid, which we do based on IIT data. I mentioned it at the beginning, it's not only platform and data, it's also a community, something which is very close to the heart of Shaida. We really saw it in action, both at global level with the Bern network and also in countries. We have a distinguished panelist from Malawi, and he will explain to us how being part of this in-depth exercise for the Clearinghouse actually sustained and played the advocacy part for more finances in data and statistics in countries. So we really want to scale the communities building around the platform. So again, we are very excited to share the tool with you and share our thoughts and ideas for the future. We look forward to receiving your feedback, and we would like you to be part of this journey with us. It's a prototype. It's a nice prototype. There are already users who are making serious decisions on this prototype, but we're aiming for an even better version 1, and we want you to help us shape the future of this platform. So with this, thanks again to IIT for having us, and special thanks to the panelists who take their time to be with us again on that topic. Over to you, Jurei.
Thanks very much, François, for that overview and that introduction. And indeed, we are trying to try something different with the Clearinghouse, which is to really see through timely use of information where the needs are greatest for resourcing for data and statistics, and who is there to supply such resources to really play that almost matching role. So we will demonstrate to you shortly how that works. But before we move on to the demonstration, we wanted to do a short poll exercise with those of us who have joined us in this session today. So if I may ask the organizers and Julia, if you could please put the first poll on the screen. So I hope you can see the questions. We want to hear your thoughts at this juncture on the following question, which is, what information about the development data financing landscape do you wish you had easy access to? And you can choose from several different answers, which you can see on the screen, and include A, funding flows by provider, per country and over time, B, funding flows by SDG indicator over time, C, national budget allocation to data and statistics, D, national statistical capacity building priorities, E, the state of gender data financing per country and region, F, the estimates of country and regional gaps between the supply and demand for statistical capacity funding, and G, other. So you can choose more than one answer, and I can see that many of you are already responding. So we have many responses here that indicate that you would like information on national budget allocation to data and statistics, which is great. And I can see that it keeps shifting. So maybe I'll just give us a few more seconds to input our responses. Okay, any of you who would like to know funding flows by provider, per country, and over time. And also estimates of the country and regional gaps between the supply and demand for statistical capacity funding. So thank you very much for participating. I think that gave us a really good snapshot of what your interests are. And maybe if we can wrap up the poll now, we can show you the clearinghouse and see if we can respond to your expectations and these questions that we have with regards to the financing flows for data and statistics. So at this point, let me just close the poll then. And I will share my screen to show you the platform. I hope you can all see this. I am delighted to present to you in front of you the Clearinghouse platform, which is accessible to you all at smartdatafinance.org, and we will input this link into the chat box shortly. So what you can see here is the homepage of the Clearinghouse, from where you can navigate and find a wealth of information on the financing flows for data and statistics. And using the tabs at the top here, you can navigate these different categories of information, which you heard briefly from François earlier, include funding flows. So this is the supply side information, funding opportunities, where you can find and access both recipient country profiles as well as aid provider profiles. And you can also access project profiles, as well as key resources, including over 700 policy as well as other documents. And you can also connect to other users through the forum, which is the community function, which is intended to support partnership building. And if you come down here to the blue button on gender, it will take you straight to a gender data financing channel, which will give you a comprehensive overview of financing to gender data for the past 10 years. So how does this all work in practice? Let me illustrate. So let's say I wanted to understand the broad trends in data financing. I will click the funding flows button up here, which will take me to this page, which shows me in near real time the different financing flows for data and statistics, including temporal trends, as well as trends by SDG, by government functions, as well as statistical activities, which I can select using the tabs above this colorful bar over here on the right. And if I scroll down through this map on the left, I can zoom in on any country here and see an overview of financing flows at the country level. So to give you an illustration, if I were interested in the funding flows for data in Niger, let's say in the period from 2016 to 18, I can select the time period here using this button, and it's available from 2015 to 19. So I would click 16 to 18. And then I would scroll down here to select Niger on the map. And by clicking on the country, I can quickly see in this blue box an overview not only of the commitments, but also the disbursements from aid providers, both totally and by the individual providers. So I can see here that Niger received in this period about $31.8 million in commitments, and the top donors were the World Bank, EU institutions, and Switzerland. So if I were an officer at the National Statistical Office of Niger, for example, I can use this function and click on this box to very quickly see who the major donors are operating on data and statistics in my country if I wanted that information. And if I were an officer from a development agency, I can use this box to see who the top donors are and who I might partner with or contact to get more information about what it's been like to work on different projects on data and statistics in this country. Now from here, if I wanted more detailed information about a recipient or an aid provider, I can go check out the profiles that we mentioned earlier. And I can do that either by scrolling up here and clicking on funding opportunities, which I mentioned earlier, or I can stay on this page and I can scroll down to get easy access to these profiles down here. And you can see that they're both recipient profiles and aid provider profiles I can quickly select. So let me now say I wanted to get in detailed information on Malawi. I will click this button here, which will take me to the dedicated recipient profile page for Malawi. And you can see here that under the country name, it says in-depth study. And what this means is that for Malawi, we have information on financing flows and the needs, not just for the National Statistical Office, but for 4 to 5 other line ministries in the National Statistical System. So this means ministries of agriculture, of health, and a few others, for instance. And we have this information on this version of the Clearinghouse, not just for Malawi, but for 3 other countries. And these include Rwanda, Niger, and Gambia. So on this page, I can see not just the top providers for data and statistics from 2017 to 19, but I can also see the total budget for the NSO, which I can see using this graph here. I can also see the future budget expectations, as well as key benchmarks and figures for the status of the National Statistical System and the capacity, which is important to really understand the results and the impact of the investments into data and statistics. And I can also see a range of country projects down here. So to give you just another quick illustration, if I were an officer at the NSO of Malawi, for example, and I wanted to understand what the budget shortfall is for the National Statistical Office in the next 2 years, I can scroll up to the graph I mentioned on the future budget expectations, which is here. And I can see how much has been committed to the NSO, both by the government, which you can see in green, by aid providers, which is in yellow, and I can also see the shortfall, which is expressed in red. And I can see this both in US dollars and in the local currency. So here, for example, I can see that for the NSO to maintain its operations in 2022, it would require an additional $2.9 million. And for 2023, this figure is 3.1. And I can put these in whatever report I may be putting together. Now, if I were interested in having such information also for individual projects, I can scroll down to the project list I showed you briefly just now, which is down here. And I can click on any of these individual projects to get a better sense of what the funding status is over the lifetime of the project. So for example, this project on environment statistics from 2021 to 25, I can click here to see what the total budget is that's being dispersed or planned by the government, as well as by aid providers, and for each year of the project where this information is available. And to refer to what François was saying earlier, we are drawing on data from over 36,000 projects for the very first time. So we have a real wealth of information on the Clearinghouse. And you can access this not only through the country profile, as you saw here, but also through the profile, the project profiles tab that you saw from the homepage. So I hope this has given you an idea of what the recipient profile is like. As you heard earlier, we have in addition over 7 detailed profiles for aid providers, which we encourage you and invite you all to have a look at later on. But I will stop my walkthrough here and hand over to Jay so she can walk you through the gender data channel and show you how we can leverage sectoral entry points for financing data and statistics. So Jay, over to you.
Great, thank you. I hope everyone can see my screen. But as Jurei mentioned, we recognize that some users may have sectoral or thematic entry points when it comes to entering the world of data and statistics. So in the current version of the Clearinghouse, this would come through gender data, but there is the possibility and potential for adding more sectoral areas in the platform in the future. So we'd really encourage your feedback on that as well in the chat or in follow-up. So in keeping with this theme of adopting different personas, let's say I was a program officer at an NGO looking to put together a funding proposal for a project on gender data in Latin America. I can use the gender data channel that was referenced earlier to easily find the information that I need for a robust proposal. As Jurei mentioned, it is accessible from every page on our platform, clicking this blue button here on the left. So once I'm on this page, what kind of information would I have access to? So as I scroll down, I see that the gender data channel gives me a comprehensive overview, comprehensive information on the gender data financing in over 20 IDA countries for the past 10 years. I also see here on the left an overview of the different SDG indicators that require sex disaggregated data. As I continue down the page, I will be able to see the top gender data financing providers here on the left, and I'll also be able to access project level information that Jurei has referenced earlier on the right. And then I can continue down this page to really understand the results of these projects. So here in this case, we can see the average number of gender data relevant instruments that have been conducted globally. So as you can see, this platform is defaulting to a global view, but I'll be able to access this information at both the regional and country level as well. So let's go back to my funding proposal for Latin America. So I would come and use this drop-down menu here to click on the region of interest. In this particular case, that would be the Americas. So this updates the page to a different view for that region. So when I scroll down, I can see here that there was a significant decline in gender data financing in the region in 2019. And if I was curious, I could keep going down to get a sense of the top gender data providers in the region. As you can see on the screen, this would be the World Bank, Canada, and the United Nations Children Fund. As we've talked about earlier, we can also then look at some of the top gender data related projects here on the right to really get a sense of the activities that are going on in the region. So with this information, I will be able to understand the different institutions and partners that I could explore potential collaborations with or get in touch with to learn more about their experiences in the region. And as Jurei referenced earlier, I could do this through the platform itself by asking a question in the forum to really connect with other users. I'll end the demonstration here, knowing that this was just scratching the surface of all the different ways in which you can use the platform. But I really hope that you can see that I could access a wealth of information for that funding proposal for Latin America to ensure that I have a robust proposal. We really hope that this demonstration has given you a helpful overview of how you could use the Clearinghouse in your own work. And so I encourage you to go to smartdatafinance.org after the events today to really see the platform yourself and click through on all the things that we didn't get to look at today together. So thank you so much for your attention. And it's my pleasure to introduce my boss, Shaida Badiee, the Managing Director at Open Data Watch, to facilitate a discussion with our eminent speakers. Over to you, Shaida.
Thank you. Thanks, Jay. And thank you, Jurei, for that excellent presentation of the platform. And thank you for the storytelling part of it, because after all, we really want to focus of the platform to be how it's used and making it useful and usable for everyone. So it's really important to have those use cases in mind. Having said that, now we have two perspectives from potential users or maybe already users of the Clearinghouse and have a conversation with them. And I'm really glad to have Andrea Ries with us. Andrea is the Senior Advisor of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, STC, and also Isaac Chirwa, who's the Assistant Commissioner of Statistics, National Statistical Office of Malawi. We're really glad to have both of them. Andrea wears multiple hats. She represents not only a donor country and not only a country that helped us to build the Bern network, the coalition of donors around smarter data financing, but Andrea is also very much involved in the development effectiveness agenda and very active in the global partnership for effectiveness effectiveness around data and cooperation. So, Andrea, I'll have the first question for you. And the question is, as a senior advisor at the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, how do you see the Clearinghouse informing your work?
Well, thanks a lot, Shaida, for this question. Yes, I see this Clearinghouse most and foremost to something which helps our officers in the field to actually develop their program and also reflect on their priorities. And Switzerland is maybe not untypical of many classical donors. On one hand, data are becoming more and more important in our work. And when we do an analysis of our portfolio, and that's also something you can actually find on the Clearinghouse, it's uploaded, our profile with regards to our investment there. You see there is quite a bit of investment. At the same time, we don't actually have a priority around investing in data as a sector. So, and that's maybe the sort of very special things around data. It's kind of all over the place because you might be an agency who specifically has a focus on investing in statistical capacity and has very specialized programs. But many of us, like our organization, we don't really do that, but we do that in a very cross-cutting way. We might have colleagues like, our people working on the water program, and they investing in sort of a developing framework for SDG indicators. We have others who are in the gender field and happen to invest in data around gender as part of their gender portfolio. And that really means that in our staff, we don't have specialized people around data. And so at the same time, we would like to encourage them to become more active, but with relation to their specific sectors, and do that in a smart way. And for that, this platform is really very useful because it enables people who are not specialized on kind of data cracks to kind of navigate around and find a wealth of information as you have gone through, at country level with regards to certain sectors from the donor perspective, but also from the recipient perspective. So I see that really as a help for a non-specialized public who increasingly needs to invest around data, but needs to do it in a smart way to find their way rather quickly in this complex field, and where all sorts of, kind of background information is accessible. That's the way we hope to use it, and where we already are using it.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrea. And really, that's very clear and very important point that we need to make this data much more usable, not only for a few experts, but for more of people who really need it for analysis, for monitoring, decision making. So that's a great point. And is an important point from donor perspective. Now, over to you, Isaac. I have a similar question for you. As the Assistant Commissioner of Statistics at the National Statistical Office of Malawi, how do you see the Clearinghouse informing and being useful for your work? Over to you, Isaac.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well and see you. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Go ahead.
All right. In Malawi, financing for development data has always been a challenge, both on the government side as well as development partner side. And the advent of the COVID coronavirus has really compounded matters, as both the government and even development partners seem to be strained financially, and the priorities have changed quite a lot. But you know, that has reduced significantly the funding to statistics, the generation of statistics. But we need the good data for informed decision making. If we are to do any proper planning, any proper decision making, it has to be evidence based. You talk of the SDGs, the need to be monitored and to see whether we're achieving the intended purpose of the SDGs. At the local level, we have several initiatives, the Malawi 2063, which is like our vision. We have the Malawi Growth and Development Strategy. We need to be monitoring and evaluating all these initiatives or programs or development agendas. So without proper financing, I think it's quite, we may have our plans in place, but without proper financing to that generation, I think that would be problematic. But the coming in of the Paris 21, in my view, is going to bring in renewed interest in terms of financing to development data, because first and foremost, it will create that the transparency required whenever a development partner or the government has given money to us, they want us to account for it. So I think this will be a very good platform where the accountability issues will be dealt with, and people can see that indeed the money has been used for the intended purposes. And it will also create some visibility and maybe the pride, if I may put it, to the development partners who are pumping in the money to statistics, and that would encourage them to. It's like something that would it's a reward of some kind or an incentive of some kind that should encourage them to move on and support us even more. It also creates the other most important thing is that the gaps that are there, the yawning gaps that are there in supporting statistical generation of statistics is clearly indicated in the clearinghouse. So I think it will be very visible and clear that the gap is there, and this has always been the challenge. And it will be like a one-stop shop for development partners. If they want to assist us in a certain area, I think they'll be able to see it. I think this is the area that can make the most impact. So I think the coming in of the clearinghouse will definitely reduce some of our worries. And we have already started seeing the fruit. I think just the mention of clearinghouse to some of the development partners, they're already interested in supporting us, knowing that their support will be known across the globe. I think so. I mean, clearinghouse has really come at an opportune time when we really needed it, especially with the advent of the COVID-19. Thank you. Let me stop there first.
Thank you. Thanks, Isaac. I really like the points that you mentioned on transparency and accountability and making it much more visible, both on the positive side, meaning donors who are doing really well, and also on the negative side are the areas where there are gaps in funding and areas where they're left behind. So really important points. Thanks for that. I have a second question for you, Andrea, and this time I'm just going to be looking more to the future. And based on what you have seen so far, Andrea, how can the platform grow and serve the broader data for development community? Over to you. You're muted, Andrea.
Sorry. It can grow by being used and being improved. I mean, hopefully this is going to be a living meeting place, and where we can improve and also, you know, have a feedback loop of feeding back data, but also recognizing what maybe unmet requests and questions are. And what is particularly important is as a kind of donor country, we're already giving the data to Yati, for instance, or also to the DAC OECD. But I think here it's important that we have people like Isaac, I mean, really sort of the national statistical offices who are in the midst of, coordinating at country level and sort of formulating the request. And by being a sort of a very shortcut between active, agencies from developing countries and all the other donors, all the other actors, I think that's really sort of an added value. Very often our people come across data needs, but they come across them via maybe sectors. As I said, they might be working in the water sector or in other sectors, but actually they have very little knowledge of what key actors as national statistical offices are actually doing. That usually, since they're not working in that sector, but maybe in other sectors, they're not very aware of the key coordinating role. And so I do hope that this platform also serves as a platform for the various national statistical offices to be a bit more prominent, a bit more visible in their key role of sort of being a facilitator and coordinator of the data environment at country level. And so hopefully they'll be very actively associated and feeding in also their requests and their needs.
Thanks, Andrea. Very, very valuable feedback. Isaac, now coming to you, I have the same type of question for you looking to the future. And given your role at the National Statistical Office, how can the platform grow and serve the broader data for development community in your view? Over to you, Isaac.
Yeah, of course, we are just starting, so maybe it's too early to talk of improvements, areas of improvements. But I think as we go along, maybe we should see how, where we are doing fine and what is working and what is not working. So I think that should always be a constant, constantly updated, so that we from that data we can know, I think, which areas needs to be improved. But I think maybe from just as a beginning, you may recall that we started with just a few institutions or line ministries in the national statistical systems. So the other very key line ministries as well that have not been included. So I think they're key. Their data statistics is as important, but because we were given this small number of line ministers to be included, I think that's why we only had, I think, 5 out of NSO. So if we can include other ministries like Minister of Transport and so on and so forth, I think that should really help us to improve the coverage and the support that can be generated through this platform. That is my number one take. The second one, maybe, as I said, we're just starting, so it's too early to say that.
It's difficult to hear. Isaac, you're breaking. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
you can hear me?
Now you're back. Now you're back. Repeat what you just said 30 seconds ago.
Okay. But the addition of online ministers, is that one?
Maybe you're covering your Isaac. Maybe you're covering your microphone. So can you
hear me?
Yeah, now you can hear you, but just don't touch anything. Just talk.
Okay. All right. So I was saying that maybe we should also consider adding some more line ministries, like for the case of my country, because I know that some line ministries have not been included in this platform. So if we can include the other line ministries, that would be great, because we'll also be covering them and supporting them. I think that should be a plus to our country. But as I said, we're just starting, so we cannot make a lot of suggestions as of now. But you know, if we can also include our fellow countries like the neighboring countries like Zambia and so on and so forth. By the way, I'm in Zambia right now. I think that should also be a plus. So I would really encourage that we should also involve our peer countries who have, I think, the same kind of problems that we have. Right here in Zambia, they are having a lot of problems. Actually, I'm supporting them in the census. The census, they postponed it last year. They failed this year. They are failing again. All because of issues to do with financing. They're failing to get enough, to generate enough resources for the census. You can imagine something as basic and as important as a census, but they're failing to do it. We did ours in 2018, exactly 10 years after our previous census, but theirs was due in 2020. And you know, periodicity is a very important feature of property of a good census. So if they are missing already by 1 year, now they'll be missing by 2 years. I think that is not good. It means that we have failed in terms of financing as a community. So if we can also include other developing countries who are facing similar challenges like Malawi, I think that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Isaac. Those are very important points, both on covering the broader data ecosystem in a country, not just national statistical offices, but other ministries. And this is what the whole spirit of the clearinghouse is, to be much more on the national statistical system than national statistical office. But I'm glad you made that point. It's a very important point. And also the comparison between countries and learning from each other is very important part of the clearinghouse. Thanks for those points. I'm looking for anyone who has any questions that wants to put in the chat or come on to ask any questions from Andrea, Isaac, or Jay or Jurei. That would be is welcome. Has anybody any questions that wants to bring up? Feel free to either put it in the chat or turn on the microphone and mention it. Otherwise, I wanted to ask one more quick round of questions from Andrea and from Isaac on any other points that they wanted to mention in terms of the advice for us as we embark on improving the clearinghouse, and also any comments that you may have on the gender channel or the selection of, would this be useful for us to have other sectoral channels on the clearinghouse? That would be really great to hear from you. And also, we have started in some ways, including monitoring of results in the clearinghouse. Would that be useful? Is that an area we should be expanding? Just a quick intervention, Andrea and Isaac, and then we'll go to a poll of the audience, and towards the closing, we're running out of time. Over to you, Andrea, for any other reflections you have.
Yes, I can very much imagine that various sort of sectorial data's communities, so to speak, could also feature importantly. Usually, if you are involved in a particular sector, I think what we want to educate our staff, if they, for instance, work in say, agriculture, that they have a sort of joint responsibility to also assure that the data around that sector is available, and that actually it can be produced by the country itself. I mean, we have a bit of a culture of, kind of needing those data, and then we sort of finance thematic surveys, whereas, really sort of get those data out and produce them regularly from the country level, partly through maybe administrative or other sources, is something which we still have to kind of push for. So I think it's probably a development I can see, that other sectorial data communities are finding themselves at the clearinghouse and finding it useful, the information they find there. Thanks.
Any points, Andrea, on results monitoring? And you think that would be a value add for the clearinghouse?
I find it a bit difficult to answer you to this question. I mean, as a development agencies, we have pledged to, to monitor results, our own results, and what we are trying to educate our people is to use much more data from country level rather than sort of producing our own results matrix. And if we do so, that at least share those data. So I can see a place there because, kind of results orientation is so important for many actors. But I think we also have to steer it in the right direction. And maybe this platform is a good way to have a conversation that not everybody has its own sort of results perspective, and we sort of end at cars at country level.
Very, very useful points. Thanks, Andrea. Isaac, any reflections from you on this sectoral focus that we have right now? We have a gender focus and a gender channel on the clearinghouse. Do you think this would be useful? And what other sectors do you think would be useful for the clearinghouse? And any other points that you want to make?
Yeah, I think, thank you. I think the gender is quite welcome. As you know, we are always talking about mainstream gender, but some of these is mere words, but I think when we put it in practice, that really reflects what we are help us in mainstreaming gender into our statistics. I think we also can be thinking of other things, like especially I was thinking that the coming of COVID-19, maybe we can also have maybe some a reflection on that, how the financing to data for maybe we can just, the health sector I think is one of the most important sectors, so maybe we can pick some of the most important crucial indicators there, HIV and so on. Maybe those could also be looked at in more details. Maybe we can also present our statistics in terms of how our funding has been flowing to the generation of the indicators for the SDGs, because some of these can really have problems in terms of resources and financing. So if we can clearly capture such kind of data, of course, it's very difficult to allot an amount to an indicator, but at least we know that from, let's say, from this particular survey, we're able to generate so many indicators that are associated with the monitoring of SDGs and so on. I think if we can be able to present that maybe in a subtle way, I think that would be quite a welcome breakdown of the statistics of the financing to statistics that I would really love to be shown on the platform. Thank you.
Thanks, Isaac. Those are spot on, both focusing more on monitoring funding for different SDGs and also important sectors, another important sector like health. That's very good. Well, I wanted to thank both Isaac and Andrea for these panel discussions. And now I wanted to sort of see whether we can go back to our audience and do another poll on from the audience, just as the question that I had for the two panelists, to see what would be different ways that the audience might use the platform. And we have a short poll for that. And Julia and the organizers, if you can put up the poll, that would be really good for us to see. Great. So this is our poll number 2. And the questions are, how would you use the information presented on the platform in your work? And you can select all that apply to you. And if you select the other, you have to specify it. So the first A is advocate for more development data financing in my country. B, better target my development data investments. C, learn about different statistical capacity building projects. D, to compare development data investments in different countries or regions. And E would be other, and of course you can specify other. So if you submit your pick, and I do not see how the poll is progressing. So if we can at some point stop the poll and look at the results, it would be great. Julia, are you the poll master, my dear? So tell us when you're seeing some aggregated result that from the audience. And if you can tell us what the result is, you can turn on your microphone. Oh, look at that. So we have, yeah, it looks like the most popular answer is compare development data investments in different countries or regions. Well, that's really great because we can do that. So it would be quite doable. Well, thank you. Thanks for this poll, and thanks for all the speakers and the audience. And just wanted to thank the organizers. I want to thank the IATI again for bringing our communities together, the community from the statistical communities and financing for development data, and IATI and Ries. These are really important groups that we should be connecting with, and also the development effectiveness community. As you've seen from our presentation, we are, the group behind all this, and that we are, quite dedicated. I'm very pleased to have Isaac and Andrea to give us their perspective from the country and from the donor agency. So, we have high hopes for the Clearinghouse. We need your feedback and your support very much. And I wanted to thank you on my behalf and behalf of Jurei and Jay. But before closing, I wanted to give a few minutes to François. Again, he started the session and he's going to close this session for us. So back to you, François, for any final closing remarks that you want to make. And thanks again to everyone. Over to you, François.
Thank you very much, Shaida. And I will just join my thanks to yours for our two excellent panelists, Andrea and Isaac. Thanks very much for being here and explaining your perspectives. Our presenters, our moderators, and also Yutian is in the back and Lawrence were in the back, and we played so hard with the IAT data to make it talk for the platform. So thanks a lot for all the work. Maybe one quote from Andrea, which I loved. The platform will grow by being used. I think that's so true. And Isaac actually showed us a few examples linking to the Zambia census, very concrete examples where the platform can be a game changer. So that's very important for us to make the prototype useful, to spread the message across that this is actually available and can help. We will do our due share and due diligence in Paris 21 and ODW to bring it to the new dimension. The prototype is fine, but we can't live with a prototype. We live with a version 1, which will be even brighter and to the point for different users. Information is fine. Information for action is even better. And it was our pleasure to hear from the World Bank last week in Bern that they are launching the Global Data Facility as an instrument to actually finance projects and key innovations in statistics. So we hope that by bringing more clarity and emphasis on good projects for the future, this will bring even more efficiency and synergies between different finances, including this new GDF from the World Bank. So stay tuned, more to come, and thanks again for the excitement. Please contact us through the platform should you have any questions or feedback, or if you want to share data and good advice. The community is now online, and we shall hear from you on the platform. Thanks again, and special thanks to IAT for having us again.
Thank you all again. Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.